All right, we're getting set up here. We're going to wait about 45 more seconds to get going. So but if you're in this chat with me, be sure and say hello. Okay. Looks like we're ready to get going. Got a few people popping in here, so who all's in here? Hey, Mark, good to see you. So, oh, there's Scott and my wife, Carla. Hi, honey. And remember, this is a Q&A session here. Of course, I'm the only one that can talk, but you guys can type. And if we don't have any questions coming in here in a bit, we'll go ahead and start just talking about something. Okay, is there a way to make an out of square opening more square using drywall? Well, you can cut it more square by using a framing square or speed square or something. Whenever I have a hole that I'm patching, a lot of times what I do is I just cut the piece bigger than the hole. Depends on how big it is. If you're doing like a small patch, you can hold the piece up there, trace around it, cut that out, mark an X on the top of the piece, and it's going to fit every time when you put it back in. Now, if it's a bigger one, I would just advise getting one side straight. So you got a straight edge, use that to use your framing square and just square it up from there. It's a little bit tricky because if you get off a little bit on one corner, the whole thing's going to be off a little bit. So it's actually kind of hard to square up an opening perfectly. Hey, Barbara, Dina, and Nick, welcome. All right, let's see. This is brand new to me in case any of you haven't figured that out. So I'm learning how to use this software too. Like I can do things like welcome everybody. And let you know that you can ask your comments or your questions in the comment section. But while we're waiting, I will bring up a subject here and start discussing it. Like one of the most popular video on YouTube. Actually, let me back up just a second. I can't hear myself. I don't even know if I need these headphones on. I assume everybody can hear me. If you can, let me know. If here, I'll ask you this way. Okay, I thought I would be able to hear myself over the headphones, but since I can't, looks like I don't need these. Probably because I'm the only one in the chat room. And why not CNC? Welcome. Okay, so what I'll bring up on the first subject is the most popular video I have out there is about popcorn ceilings because it's still a problem that's pretty prevalent in the US. We were really proud of our popcorn ceilings back then. And as a lot of you know, I'm one of the ones that used to spray this with my dad in the 70s. And there's a lot of reasons we did it, but I think the reason that the video is so popular is because there's still so much of it out there and you guys want to get rid of it, and it's not cheap. When I get rid of a popcorn ceiling, I charge upwards of $2 a square foot, usually $2.50 to $3 a square foot, because to do it right, it's a lot of work. But I've been thinking about putting out an ebook. I've got to finish my other one about the tools first, just so you know I'm working on that. But I'm thinking about putting out another ebook about popcorn ceilings, because honestly, you really just can't cover everything in one video. There's so much about popcorn that you really need to know if you're going to tackle this yourself, or even if you're going to think about having somebody else do it. So it would cover things like what popcorn really is and when might it have asbestos in it, how to figure out if it has asbestos, what ways you can get rid of it even if it has asbestos without hiring an abatement crew, all different ways you can normally get rid of it. And there's 4 or 5 different ways you can get rid of it. Things like what to do after you've scraped it off, how to texture it, and so on. So there's a lot to cover. If I did one video on that, it'd probably be an hour video. So I'm thinking about putting out an ebook and letting you guys check it out that way. I could teach you a lot more in that. Let me turn this part off. There we go. All right, let's see. We got 14 of you in here. That's awesome. Jesse, welcome. And okay, so anyway, there was another subject I want to cover, and that is skim coating, because I'm going to actually do a video on this because I hear everybody talking about skim coating all the time. And I think you guys are a little bit misled about the need for skim coating, when it should be used, and so on. So I'm going to kind of go over some of that. And first of all, let's see. I'm trying to read the comments and talk here at the same time. Yep. Going back to that last thing, I'll pop that up. But anyway, skim coating is basically the process of coating an entire surface with a thin, smooth coat of mud. And the purpose is to leave that surface just as smooth as possible. And it often takes more than one process. You don't usually get to just skim coat it, sand it, and it's just wonderful. There's more steps, but you don't need to skim coat everything. And it seems like some of you feel like that's the final step in all drywall repairs, and that is skim coating. And you know, if you're talking about just coating the whole repair, yes, you usually need to do that on a smaller one, but that's not really skim coating, at least in the way I've always discussed it. Skim coating is often used for things like getting rid of a texture so that you can put a different one up, or just to leave it smooth. So you can skim coat over most any texture. If it's too coarse, what you do is you scrape it and try and remove some of the coarseness first, and then sand it a little bit and then skim coat it. And sometimes it'll take 2 coats. Like you can skim coat popcorn ceilings. And when you do that, it's so thick up there. When you do that, it often takes 2 coats of mud. So do you need to just skim coat after you've finished the wall, done some repairs and that? No, you don't have to skim coat everything. So let's just say I've got a wall where we did some plumbing repairs or something, and there's little holes all over, nail holes and different things like that. Well, you can just fix each one, get it looking good, sand it, and it's ready for texture. Now, if you're going to leave it smooth, so like level 5 or smooth finish, then yes, you do need to go ahead and skim coat it, because to leave a wall truly smooth, you have to skim coat it. And the reason is because if you were to finish a wall and get it just as smooth as you can and then paint it, the grain of the paper will actually show through the paint. So the mud over here will just be glossy smooth, and then you'll have this paper showing through, and everything will have a slightly different sheen. So by skim coating it, you end up taking it all back to one smooth surface with the same porosity. Then when you paint it, it looks even. So let's see, we got some other questions. Let's see, I'm not sure what this question is. Too quicken the sheetrock, also has uneven levels. You might want to clarify that one more, and I'll try and answer it. So let's see. What is your order for taping angles, butts, and joints? That's a good question. When I was doing new construction, I did new construction for about 15 years. So we did everything. We did all the hanging, and then we turn around and do all the taping, finishing, texture. And I think everybody kind of has a little bit of preference, but what we would do is we would go through and tape all of the recessed joints. Well, actually, let me back up. I said that wrong. We would come in and tape all the butt joints, and then we would come and cross off those and tape the recessed joints. It really, I don't think there's really a big deal which order you do those two in, but we would always tape our angles last. And it kind of depends. If you're working in one room, it probably doesn't really matter, because one of the things you might want to look at is as each one sets up, it's easier to go across it with another line of joint tape. You won't mess up the first one as easy. It's had time to set up a little bit. So on taping itself, I'd say it's not super critical which way you go, because you're going to have overlaps and everything. Now in finishing, I did have a definite preference. We always like to finish our recessed joints first, and then we would do the butts. And that's partly because you could cross the butt joint off going across the recessed joint, and it just worked for us. But like I say, there's not really anything that determines that one is better than the other. It's kind of more what works for you, your style. Are you running finishing tools? Are you doing it all by hand, and so on? So let's see, having a major renovation done. Let me put this on screen and see if I can read it. Having a major renovation done, going with knockdown texture. Upstairs hallway, they have it on way too thick. Solution is skim coat over it to reduce the texture. Yes, that's a good use for skim coating when you've got an ugly texture, and there's a lot of ugly texture out there. The thing again about skim coating is, if you watch some of my videos, I try and point this out. You don't want to go in and just start skim coating. First thing I do with skim coating is I scrape the walls. And the point is, it may look fairly smooth. You may think the texture's not all that coarse, but there's inevitably always some little bitty bumps in the texture. And when you start coating it with your knife will literally hit those bumps and chatter like a washboard road. Same effect. Washboard road starts with one little bump, and then it just starts building. And that'll happen if you try and just texture over the wall. So I always start with scraping it, and then I sand it. And the purpose of sanding is to knock those bumps off, but also it gives it more tooth. The mud doesn't really like to stick that well to glossy surfaces. So the higher the gloss is, the more you need to roughen up the surface so that the mud will stick. And we call it giving it tooth. And what you're doing is just putting a bunch of little scratches in there. And I use like a coarse grit, like 80 grit. And then the mud can grip those scratches and hang on better. And it doesn't want to flake off and peel off. Plus, again, you're smoothing that wall out just a hair more. And then if the texture is very thick, you very well may have to put a second or third, maybe a fourth coat. You guys, it depends on your skill level. I can do a lot of them in one coat, but the heavier ones, 2 coats. Okay. Jesse, welcome. And what is the best way to approach dealing with a sagging drywall ceiling with popcorn? Looks like nails were used to attach the drywall. You know, I see that a lot. I have talked to my wife about it. We're hoping to build a house before too long. And when we do, we want to shoot a video about it so we can show you guys all kinds of things about it. But one of the things we would do is make sure that I would probably go with 5/8 sheetrock, because so many ceilings are 1/2 inch and those are usually the ones that are sagging. But there's a number of reasons that happen. And hey, Paul, good to see you in here. There's a number of reasons that ceilings sag. I can tell you that when we were doing new construction in the 70s, a lot of times the builder wouldn't put permanent heat in the house in the wintertime. So we'd have to crank up these torpedo heaters, propane heaters, and they'd be running like mad trying to dry the house out. Well, the problem is it's wintertime, so you had the windows closed. You're trapping all that moisture that you're getting to come out of the mud, and it's really got nowhere to go. So it kind of goes back into the sheetrock, makes the sheetrock saggier because it's moist. Moisture and sheetrock don't go together. And we actually walked out of somewhere we could see the ceiling waving, and my dad told the builder, that's not our problem. You guys should have had permanent heat in here. So there's a number of reasons they may have not nailed it well enough. Nails were notorious for not holding very good. I hate nails. Whenever I hang sheetrock now, I try not to use any nails, because I fixed thousands of nail pops in my life, and I've seen a lot of nails turn loose, but I haven't seen very many at all of the screws turn loose. Hey, Mickey, how you doing? And Robbie, welcome. So, you know, the thing about fixing it is it's not really very easy, because once drywall sags, if it sags much more than 1/8 of an inch, you can't push it back up once it's dry. If you do, and you put some screws in it, it's got such a pre-shape to it in that sagging shape that it just pops the screws. And I've tried it by bracing it and putting a whole bunch in, and sometimes it still pops them. So you can either skim coat the whole thing and level out between each low spot, basically floating across the high humps, which that's a lot of mud and a lot of work. Or you can shim it down and actually put a new ceiling in, which I've done one time. That was the way we fixed it. We actually had to put tapered shims. We strung up strings all across the room to get a flat grid. And then we measured and we cut shims at an angle as we needed to give us a flat surface to screw to. And then the final way would be to rip it down, start all over. And I would highly suggest going with 5/8 sheetrock on the ceiling for that reason. It's just much tougher, sags far less. Hey, I popped in on yours the other day, but I don't remember if I said anything or not, but I did later. So let's see. We got another question here. How do you scale a painting drywall business? Well, actually, I think most everybody that gets into doing this starts out small. You pretty much need to. You don't want to get in too far too fast. Even if you're a little bit bigger of a crew and you try and take on too much too fast, I've seen guys go bankrupt doing that. I once worked on a 28,000 square foot home in Seattle, Washington, and the contractor I was working for, he had about 50 guys working for him. Well, within a year, he was bankrupt because he lost control over a lot of things. Like he was losing scaffolding left and right. His helpers were walking off with tools. He had no inventory control and so on. And it can take time to do that. So my advice is to start small, get out there and get some small jobs that you can handle on your own or with like one helper and get some experience. That's the key thing. I see too many guys in drywall, especially, try and just jump right in and just say, I'm a drywaller, I can fix this stuff, I can do it. I've helped somebody one time. And honestly, if you're going to do this as a trade, you need some experience. You need to get out there and get experience and find out what works, what doesn't, how to bid things properly. And the simplest way to learn how to bid is to start. Figure out if you can, what a rough idea of the prices are. Then I look at a job and I try and figure out how long I think it's going to take me to do it. And after 35 years, I just have this kind of general idea. Oh, that should take me 4 or 5 hours, 2 days, whatever it is. And then you figure how much you need to make to be making a profit, and don't sell yourself short. Base it upon your skill level and your how fast you are. If you're not that skilled, you can't charge as much, but that'll get you some work so that you get some experience, and you'll learn a lot from mistakes. That's where I've learned a lot. So just start out small and build up and learn as quick as you can. There's a lot of guys on here like Paul and I that can teach you a lot about this business and help jumpstart your knowledge, because I learned most of it the hard way. My dad, excuse me, my dad, he taught me how to do this stuff, but after I quit working for him, I learned way more, because I went out and started doing this drywall repair stuff, and it was totally different. It really challenged me. It was way different than finishing new construction. To me, doing the new stuff is pretty easy overall. You can get some difficulties with butt joints and weird cuts and things like that, but the majority of it is pretty simple. Drywall repairs, on the other hand, every one of them's different. You never know what you're going to run into, and you'll run into some stuff that'll really challenge you. So that would be my advice there. Let's see. When replacing some ceiling drywall with knockdown texture, how close to the wall would you cut out the existing ceiling? Well, I cut it as far as I need to, and if I'm starting to get close to the wall, a lot of times I'll just go ahead and cut it right up to there, because there may be backing over there that you don't have to try and substitute. And a lot of times what I do is, if you were to cut your sheetrock on the ceiling all the way to the wall and you tape it, now you're going to mess up the wall too. And if you're just doing a repair or one room, I know there's some people that will disagree with me on this, but I've done a lot of experimenting with this. I'm convinced that a really good caulking job can do about as good a job as taping the angles. You got to caulk it where there's plenty of caulk in there. It can't be too little, because it's going to shrink a little bit every time, and you might have to go around and do it twice. When I do my popcorn ceilings, I go around and usually I end up cutting some of the angles just in the process of scraping it and all that. And so that's what I do. I caulk it. And sometimes I'll caulk it twice, just because the next day it'll shrink a little bit. You got to be able to put on a good bead of caulking. It looks great. I've gone back to jobs years later where I knew I caulked some angles and it still looked good. I actually want to do a video about that, because I've thought about this a lot. The reason that we tape the angles is mostly speed, but there is some other reasons. When you hang new construction, you've got a new edge here and a new one here. They're both recessed. And so it's just about faster to go ahead and tape it and coat it than it would be to, say, caulk it and then coat it anyway, because you got to fill that recess. Plus you got all the nails and screws in the angles. So it makes sense to tape it. We know it's a good strong joint. It's part of the taping process. So it just makes sense when you're doing new construction. But on a repair, I don't want to mess up somebody's wall and have to retexture it and repaint the whole wall, because it's just going to add a bunch of unnecessary cost to their overall bill. Okay. Hey, Sean, yes, go Air Force. I still miss the Air Force. And yeah, getting back to this, yes, I did kind of answer this earlier, but let's see, out of square window opening or doorway. Oh, that's actually a different question. And no, you really can't fix it with drywall mud. If you shim the sheetrock before you hang the sheetrock, you can fix it a little bit. There's a limit to what you can fix when it's out of square, but by shimming it with tapered shims, where maybe you start out with 4 up here and work down to 3 and 2 and so on, you can actually correct a little bit of that with cardboard shims. You just go to the big box store. They're cheap, simple thing to do. But as far as laying on more mud, that's a bad idea, especially on corners. You just don't want exposed mud on a corner. I hope that helps. Let's see. Cool. And for Robbie, thanks for answering my previous question. I have one more. Why do you think Venetian plaster is not popular? Is it because it's expensive or because of the lack of marketing and people doing it? I do Venetian plaster. I actually went to a school, spent a week long in a school in Denver one time learning faux finishes, and that was one of them. And I really like it. We were just watching a video about Venetian plaster on YouTube yesterday because I want to do that video for you guys too. And as far as why it's not so popular, I think cost. Like the last one I did, you end up having to go round and around a room about 6 times because I like to do this layered technique where you put kind of like splotches of Venetian plaster on. You don't just do a solid, even coat. It gives you kind of a boring Venetian plaster. You do a little here, leave some voids here and there, and each time you keep filling in more of those voids and you're layering it. And Venetian plaster goes on kind of semi-transparent, so it shows the layer beneath it. And if you do it right, it's gorgeous, but it takes a lot of work to keep going around and around. And that's just to get the Venetian plaster on. Then you got to burnish it. Then you can choose to polish it. You can choose to wax it, clear coat it, so on. It can be quite a bit of work. So I'd say the biggest thing is cost. And I actually think a lot of people don't really know what it is. Tell you what, everybody, if you can answer, tell me if you know what Venetian plaster is and do you like it. But yeah, marketing maybe, because I've never seen marketing for it. I didn't really even know what it was till I took that class. But I do think it's a beautiful finish. And let's see. Okay, our house was built with 1/2-inch sheetrock on the ceiling so I can see all the joists. How would you remedy this? So is it kind of sagging? I'm going to assume you can see the joist or the ceiling joist because it's kind of sagging in between them. That's what I was talking about earlier. When sheetrock sags very much at all, there's not much you can do about it because once it takes a set in that sag, it like dries hard in that shape. And if you try and push it back, it's got a lot of resistance and it'll just pop nails left and right. So it's not a good idea to try and do that. Once it has, once it's done that, I was kind of explaining this earlier. You might go back and watch the video after it's all done, so I don't repeat it twice. But basically, you can shim the high spots so that it brings the sheetrock down to the low spots, or you might be able to float it out with like a skim coating blade, something like that. But yeah, go back and watch that, and I think I explained it a little bit more. Let's see. Yeah, labor prices. Sometimes I'm shocked that the price to hang and finish drywall these days is not much higher than it was 30 years ago when I started. Just happens that way sometimes. But one of the other videos I want to do is I want to put on a kind of a mini class about how to be faster at drywall, because in order to make more money doing drywall especially, you have to learn how to be more efficient. And there's a lot to that. When my dad taught me this, I used to question a lot of what he said, because he would tell me things that would save me 15 seconds or 20 or 30 seconds. But at the end of the day, it often would save hours. It's little things like, for example, when we hung sheetrock, he taught me how to do the math, and I'm probably rusty at it, but a 12-foot sheet of rock was our most common size. So that's 144 inches. If he called out 121.5, instead of me, we did everything in eighths. So that would be 5/8. Instead of me pulling a tape measure over 121 inches and 5/8, I learned to do 22 and 3/8 from the other side. And I could just free cut it. So I didn't have to get out a T-square, didn't have to pull 4 times as long, 6 times as long. I could just walk up, do the math, cut it that quick. There was just dozens of tricks he had like that. And I've actually watched a lot of videos on YouTube about really fast drywall this and really fast drywall that. And some of them are really fast, but some of them are like, there's a lot more to it. You could get a lot faster. I'm 58. I'm not going to say I'm as fast as I used to be. I don't even want to be that fast, but there's so many tricks that can help you make more money just by knowing the right tools, techniques, tricks, and tips, and a lot of shortcuts like that measuring one. I'll try and remember to do that. I take it you've got a lot of pictures of it there. Yeah, I'm still working on my studio out here. I think I showed some of you that I'm making progress on it, but it seems like every time I turn around, I have to use it for something else, like cutting firewood and fixing things and building things. But excuse me. But it is coming along nicely. And once I get that done, I can start doing a lot more of these videos out there. Before, I was doing videos out of a studio that was about 5-6 miles from here. So it was a lot more work to go down there and set up. Now it's actually out in my garage. I can just walk out there, shoot some video. So I have just dozens of ideas for videos. If you guys have any ideas for videos you want to see me do, comment down below and let me know. Yeah, I'm going to be, I just bought a skim coating blade too. I'm going to be doing a video on that. I've been watching these skim coating blades for a while, and I really think if you do much of this at all, if you do repairs, if you're a handyman and you need to float out big repairs or butt joints, I think skim coating blade is really going to up my game, because it's designed to be able to flex a little bit, but not too much. Like my knife actually can flex too much, and a trowel doesn't flex enough for me. So this is kind of like in between a trowel and a mud knife. So I think it's with that narrower blade, it's just going to flex just the right amount and let me coat things in fewer coats with a much more even crown to it. So I'll be going to Moab, Utah, which is 90 miles from here, next week. And I have to fix a gymnasium ceiling that's 20 feet up. And then we have to fix the ceiling in their bathroom, some water damage. So I'm going to test it out there. The water damage in the bathroom is about, I think it's close to a full sheet of rock. So it'll be a perfect place to test it. And I'll try and shoot some video, of course, and share that with you guys. Any of you that do this for a living. The blade cost about $80, and then I bought a handle for $35. So it's not really something I'd say that the average homeowner is going to need, but it also can kind of teach you a little bit more about how we do this stuff. And let's see. I see we got 20 people in here, so that's cool. And I got a few more subjects I can cover, but if you guys have questions about projects, questions about any of my videos, be sure and ask them. And let me see if I can pull something up on the screen here. So I'm looking off at my other screen. My editing setup is 4 massive screens. You've probably seen it. Some of you have. And it works really good for editing, but so I'm looking off to the side here to see if I can find something that I was going to show you. If I know how. Like I said, this is my first time doing this, so. And I thank everybody for stopping by. It really means a lot to me to see you coming in here and showing your support and getting some questions answered. There we go. How many of you have seen some of my videos where I have done illustrations showing how to do some of this stuff? Like, see if I can pop this one out. Because we're talking about floating it out with this skim coating blade. I have a kitty knocking at my door. We have 7 cats. I'm sure some of you will think that's crazy, but let's see if I share screen 1. And address bar to allow access. There, maybe now to work. Apparently I blocked the ability to share that screen. Screen 1. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Roy and AJN and Peter Lee and Sean. Wow, all those just popped up all of a sudden. But anyway, you see on the screen here, this illustration. I like to do some of these illustrations because I think it can be really hard to just simply explain it. Yeah, we'll get it full size. When you try and just talk about how to do something, it's different than when you can show it. So I try and show here how we're trying to create this gentle taper when we're doing a butt joint. Well, that's going to be one of the advantages to the skim coating blade, is coating something like this. It's 24 inches wide. You can get them in multiple widths. I chose 24 inches. And you can get a much longer span and allow it to flex a little bit at the same time, so you'll get a much more even hump, if you will, the floating of the butt joint. And then, of course, when you're doing skim coating, actually doing skim coating, if you roll it on or if you put it on with a knife, you could go over it with the last step with this thing and just get it even smoother. So I'm really excited to try that for you guys. There. Okay, let's see. We got another question. I might have missed some. Let me back up a little too. Nope. Okay. And Roy, my sister lives in Fort Worth, has for a long time. So I've been to Texas a time or two. Sean here is in Colorado doing texture by trial and error is fine, but timely. Having your videos are awesome. Many on-site classes. My long-term goal for this channel is actually to put out a lot of classes. See, I think what a lot of people watching YouTube don't realize is there's so much more to doing drywall than what we can teach in a 15 or 20-minute video. And a lot of people complain when I go 20 minutes that that's too long. But honestly, if you're just doing one thing, I get it. You need to just go see how somebody's doing it, go try that, and you might pull it off. But there's so much more to it, from the tools that you use to the mud that you use to how you hold your knife, how thick you put it on, how you coat it. Just so much more to it than we can sometimes explain in a simple video. So my long-term goal is to create some courses. I'm going to have multiple courses. Like, for example, one of them will be it'll be kind of like a beginner's guide to drywall repairs around the house. So those of you that just want to fix your own stuff around your house, I'm going to try and gear it mostly towards that. So I'll teach you the right tools, the simple techniques, and so on. And then I can teach a separate class that will be like for handyman, painters, those who are not journeyman drywall finishers, but you want to up your game. You're doing some of these repairs on the side, but you need to up your game a little bit. So I'm going to gear it more towards that. I got to get a drink here. So anyway, there's going to be multiple classes, and one of them, it's going to be a pretty long class. It's going to be how to teach you if you want to go out there and become a drywall repair guy like I did. Because honestly, I did it by trial and error. I learned the hard way on a lot of this stuff. So that means I made a lot of mistakes. And I look back at some of them and I'm embarrassed at some of the things that I did. Most often I ended up fixing them, but there was one that bit me over and over, and it was painting the repairs. I just thought you just primed it, painted it, it was going to be good, but there was more to it than that. So I started experimenting with things like primers, buying better quality primers and things like that. And it just wasn't solving it. I finally did solve it. So in this course, I would teach you how not to make all those years of mistakes. It would cut a huge amount of time off your learning curve if you're going to do this for a living. And there's so many tricks to doing this for a living. A lot of it is simple things like being much more efficient. Just one pointer I'll give you that I do is, since I focus on drywall repairs, I have a trailer I pull, and in that trailer I've got it set up where I've got about 6 buckets with these screw-on lids. And the reason is one of them has water. When I pull up to a job site, I'm ready to start mixing up right then. I don't have to go look for water at a faucet or something or clean up in their sink. I've got 1 bucket of regular drywall plus 3 all-purpose. I've got 1 bucket of texture pre-mixed up, ready to spray. Sometimes I have to thicken it up or thin it down, but that's about it. And then I've got 3 of them for hot mud. I carry 5-minute, 20, and 45. So they're all sealed. The hot mud doesn't go bad. It doesn't spill all over the place. Little things like that just improve your efficiency. So I'll be teaching that in some of these courses. And all I can say is just keep watching. When I finally get to that point, I'll start announcing them and putting the word out. So just make sure that you're subscribed and you've clicked that bell icon like we say so much. And thank you guys. Cool. I'm glad I'm helping you guys. You know, doing drywall after 35 years, I'm honestly bored. I have a hyperactive mind. I like to learn. Whenever I do stuff, I try and learn it the best I can. I like to be really good at what I do. Well, I'm honestly getting kind of bored with drywall, and it's starting to hurt more, but I enjoy teaching you guys this stuff. I like passing it on. I like hearing stories about how you did it and it came out great. That makes me feel really good. So I love helping people anyway, and this is just a way I can do that for a lot of you. Let's see, can I run 1/2-inch board parceled? What does parceled mean, Peter? I'm not sure what the question is. Let's see, is that parallel to the floor? Are you asking, can you run the sheetrock horizontally, or do you need to stand it up, or is there a difference? Is that the question here? And let's see. And Dina, I'm looking for your list of questions. I see the one about the sheetrock having uneven levels. A lot of questions in here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I'm not seeing it in this chat. Did you put that in here in the chat? Okay, Nicholas says, I'm in the process of renovating someone's house and they have someone scrape their popcorn ceilings, exposing the brown paper and tape. That brown paper thing, that's my second most popular video because it happens quite a bit, honestly. And there is a fairly easy solution for that. Let me see if I can show you here. I have a video out about that, and I've got 2 or 3 of them out because it's a popular subject. But basically, if you look on the screen right here, that thumbnail, if you look for that thumbnail, I've kind of covered that. So what you essentially do is you start by removing anything that's loose, like these edges here. So you take a utility knife and just cut around that so that when you peel that back, it stops right at your cut. If there's anything loose in the middle, peel it up. You don't want anything loose and flaking. And then you put a product on it that I use called RX35, or there's another one called Guards. In the link in the description below this video on the screen here, I've got links to those products on Amazon if you can't find it locally. Sherwin-Williams should have it. Your big box stores might have the Guards. I've never bought that one because the RX35 works perfectly for mine. So, and then after you've treated it with the RX35, all you have to do is coat it with mud like normal, float it out a little wider. So watch that video. It'll show you how to do that. Okay, let's see. And as far as this question, why are the joints cracked sometimes? Sorry, I'm starting to get a little hoarse here, but there's so many reasons joints can crack that I can't really tell you for sure, but the most common reason is settling or expansion and contraction even. It's basically movement is most commonly what does it. There are instances where it could crack because they didn't do it right. Like one example is, I hope I can get through this. One example is if you use mesh tape and you coat it, you embed it with regular all-purpose joint compound, it will crack. Not every single square inch or whatever, but that's another one I learned the hard way. I taped it was a remodel and had quite a few joints to do in there. So I taped them and I coated it with regular all-purpose mud. Came back the next day and I had about 30 feet of cracks. So I learned the hard way. I tried coating it again, came back the next day, it was all cracked again. So I had to fix it right. So it could be due to somebody not hanging it right, not putting enough screws and nails in, not taping it right, not finishing it right. Even drying it too fast could possibly cause it. There's a lot of reasons why, but I have some videos about how to fix ceiling cracks and wall cracks, and they're all basically the same. So if you want to check those out, they'll help you a lot. Like this one right here, that's one of the videos. And I even have some on cracked corner bead, and I have one on the ceiling crack, which I don't have that thumbnail handy, but okay, Dina, if someone scraped the ceiling and they just did a whole bunch of damage, trying to get the popcorn corn off quicker, and they probably did a lot of spots where they have torn paper showing everywhere, some gouges, things like that. Well, I had that happen one time where the homeowners wanted to remove it, and I bid the job and I told them it probably wasn't going to scrape. It had been painted too many times, and they said, oh, we got a lot of time. They flipped houses, and they said, we'll just scrape it and then you come in and finish it. Well, when they got done scraping it, there was torn paper spots about this big or more every 8 inches to a foot through the whole house. So I told them how to fix it, which is a lot like that torn paper video where you get all the loose stuff off. If it's lifted, you cut it back. And then I made them just coat the whole thing with RX-35 twice. They put 2 coats on it. Then I skim coated the whole ceiling. And that video I've got about skim coating, there's 2 different ways. You can roll it on, trowel it smooth, or you can put it on with a knife or a trowel and smooth it further that way. So I have 2 videos showing how to do that. Because when it's damaged that much, that's when you do the RX-35 2 times, fix anything that's bad. If it's deep or a big crack where you got to float it out, fix all that to where it's pretty decently fixed. But if it's just a little bit of torn paper, skim coating will probably fix that. So you just skim coat everything once you've got all the major defects kind of as far as you can. I hope that helps you out. Let me know. And as far as how to make it quicker, the fastest way for a novice is probably to roll the mud on with a paint roller and then hit it with like a magic trowel. And I have a video about that. Let's see if I can show you what that looks like. The magic trowel is more forgiving for novices. It's kind of like a window squeegee for cleaning your windows, but kind of on overdrive. I think this is, it looks, my thumbnail looks kind of like this right here. Takes a second to pull this up. There. So you basically get mud about as thick as you can roll it. You roll it on the surface pretty thick, and then you go over it with a magic trowel, smooth it out, and sand it down. And that's about as fast as you can do it. I do it with just a mud knife, and I can do it faster, but most of you won't be able to do that. So I'd recommend the paint roller technique. But I do show how to do a skim coating, kind of like I show here, where I just simply skim coated the whole thing with a pan and a knife. And let's see. Awesome, Mark. You know, it's funny because it took me until recently to try that. I've just always done it by spraying and it works great. And I still don't think I'll use the sponge technique everywhere, but when I did this last video in my bedroom here and repaired that one, I was actually blown away by how good it came out. Hang on a second. So yeah, I'm really glad to hear that you use that technique and it works so well. And ceiling board. Still confused about your question, Peter. Scott, yes, actually there is. Anytime you're painting or applying mud, there's a few simple rules. You want a surface that's clean, sound, and dull. And that means if there's any greasy, like stains or something like in a kitchen, you need to clean the grease off. And then sound means it doesn't have flaking, loose, peeling, chalky surfaces. If it does, you need to sand it or clean up the loose stuff. And then dull, meaning if it's glossy paint, you need to dull it. Now, there is a product called Crud Cutter. There's one they have that they call Crud Cutter Deglosser, I believe it is. I haven't used it, but I've read that people have good results with it. And all a deglosser does is it kind of penetrates the paint, takes off a little bit of the sheen, softens it a little bit, allows the next layer to bite into it. But I kind of prefer to sand it. So I'll take and scrape it and sand it with like some 80 grit. And then the 80 grit is coarse enough, those scratch marks actually give the paint or mud something to hang on to. So it literally bites into those scratches and it can grip it. So that's the whole secret to skim coating over gloss paint. Sand it really good. Wow, I can't believe it's already 7:57. I can keep going a little bit longer. Does everybody want to hear another subject, or you got any more questions, or is everybody about ready to call it a night? It's been 58 minutes. These live streams, they go by pretty quick. And let's see. I actually have a video out about painting a drywall repair properly. I haven't released it yet, but that's probably one of my next ones I'll do. That'll help a little bit too. So let's see, another subject. One of the things I like to cover a lot, and I cover this in a lot of my videos, is basically there's some really common mistakes a lot of novices make. And if you figure out that that's a mistake and you learn how not to do that, your finishing work will improve dramatically. It can change a lot. And one of the biggest ones that I've seen is putting mud on too narrow. If you're doing a recessed joint, you can put it on fairly narrow. But if you're doing a repair is almost always let me change the screen here. A repair is almost always taking a flat surface, putting some joint tape on it, and putting mud on it. So now it's got a hump. And if it's got a hump, you have to coat it whiter. So when you break out that 6-inch knife and start putting it on like that, you're not floating it. And again, it goes back to what I was showing on screen a little bit ago. And that is that you got to create a gentle hump. So what gives a repair away is too many people coat it narrow and it goes like this. and it's the shadows that give it away. So when the light comes across, it hits that, creates a shadow over here, and gives it away. So when you create a really gentle hump, it breaks the shadow up over such a wide area that you can't see it. It's there, but our eyes can only pick up so much. So we're illusionist. Drywallers, a good drywaller cannot make your surface flat. We can, but you don't want to pay that much. What we want to do is create the illusion that it's flat so that you don't see the defects that are still there. But I could walk in most anybody's house, take a 4-foot straight, like a level or something, a straight edge, and find a butt joint, and it will rock. It will rock back and forth. Let's see if I can get in the screen here, because the hump is still there. It's just so gradual that you can't see it. So if you see a drywall hump, that usually means somebody didn't know how to float it out wide enough. Or the second mistake with novices, or even pros that aren't as good as they could be yet, is putting it on too thick. So the second most common thing, I've got a video out about both of these, because the second most common mistake is I see people wanting to put it on real heavy and just sand it smooth. Hey, you know, drywall mud sands easy. Why not just put it on heavy and sand it smooth? It just really doesn't work well to do that. And it's multifaceted, but if you put it on real heavy and try and sand it smooth, this edge where it meets the drywall, you're probably going to sand the crap out of the paper first and damage that before you ever get that edge feathered out. So my suggestion would be to go watch my videos about the most common mistakes, and let's see if I can show you that. Wrong screen. Because that alone can just dramatically improve your work quality. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, there. That's my #1 best drywall mudding tip, and it's got the 6-inch knife X'd out because that shouldn't be your go-to knife for everything. It's the most common knife I use because it works great for many things, but it doesn't work worth a crap to float out a repair where you've got a hump. You just got to go wider. And part of that is just practice. I honestly sucked at butt joints for a long time. I struggled with them, couldn't figure out how to do it. And finally, I just got to where I could see it. And that's why I created that illustration, so I can show you guys what it's supposed to look like. Oh, let's see. Easy way to fix tape separation. So like where the tape has come loose from the surface, like peeling off or something. Is that what you're asking? There's a little delay in these broadcasts, so it might take me a second to see your answer here. And slightly raised. Okay, well, let's see. If it's slightly raised up, because sometimes the joint tape will just, let's see, how do I describe it? It just kind of like, it delaminates, but it'll get a curved shape to it. I'll go back to the full screen here. So if the tape goes from being stuck, it'll often cup, and it's not stuck at all. So basically the rule is, if it's not stuck firmly to the surface, it needs to be cut out and replaced. If you cut out just a little bit on the side, say, and the joint's not showing, you can probably just coat it. But if you have to cut enough that the joint shows, you just got to retape it, refinish it that way. If it's sticking up because they didn't really coat it right, you just got to keep coating it wider and wider until you've just barely coated the joint tape, but you've extended that hump like I was talking about. I've actually made up a lot of these illustrations, and like this one. Yeah. Let's see, share the screen again. There we go. Come on. Okay, so that's why I create a lot of these illustrations, is to try and show what I can't hardly talk about, which is, here's the joint tape right here. So you're trying to put in just enough mud to make that joint tape not show. And what shows is this edge right here. And if that shows, it's going to give it away. So you got to have a slightly thicker amount of mud on here than the joint tape, and then taper it out nice and white. The bigger the hump is, the wider you got to float it out. So you just keep working on that until it gets there. And let's see. See, I did an illustration like this too to show why after you sanded it, you see how it's really thin right here, but it still extends out the same, and you create a nice soft tapered edge over here. Because if you sand it wrong, there's a big difference. When you sand it right, you get a feather edge that just gently tapers into the sheetrock. If you sand it wrong, it goes over and it may taper down to the sheetrock, but it's so sudden, you'll see that edge all day. Sorry, I accidentally muted myself too long. Too much to do here. Okay. There, you see these up here? Those are skim coating blades. Just one of those runs about $90. So like I say, they're not cheap at all. Tell you what, I'm getting almost hoarse here, so let me go grab something. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. I had to go get a cough drop, see if I can. And thanks for stopping by, Scott. I appreciate it. So anyway, you see on these skim coating blades, let me take this off of here. Where did it go? There. Okay, the difference is this metal part right here is the main blade. And you notice how it's not very wide, but it's still going to have some flex to it. So this one is about 24 inches wide. That's going to allow you to coat a butt joint and get it much flatter with a slight crown to it. And like I say, I think it's going to work really good. I've heard really good things about them, so I'll let you guys know when I test it out here in a week. Let's see. What is this? Any flat box tips, I think you mean? Oh, yes, I see. You know, I was thinking, I actually have a video that I shot recently about how fast a mud box is. Well, it's same day I shot one where I talk about how to use it. I'll try and release that soon, and I'll give you the tips there. Sorry, there's such a delay. Your guys' comments about the audio came in like 20 seconds later. But thanks for pointing that out. So you want to run 1/2 inch board parallel with the ceiling joists that are 12 inches on center. Let's see. The room is 7 foot wide. How long is it? Because you should always run your sheetrock at a 90-degree angle to the ceiling joist. If you try and run it down, the ceiling joist, any joist is likely to be wavy, and 1 minute you won't have anything to screw to. Next minute, this side won't have anything to screw to. So it's iffy. I've never done it that way. I'd rather just buy 8-foot rock if it's 7 foot wide and just cut off a foot and run it across and not have butt joints that way. But I do try and minimize butt joints. Nowadays they have 16-foot rock. So there's a lot of people out there hanging 16-foot rock because you can get more done quicker and without the butt joints. Not as many anyway. Yeah, I'd seen up to 32. I hadn't seen the 48, but I believe it. And for if you're going to be skim coating like big walls and ceilings, I'd say it'd be worth it. Get off here. But since I'm trying to get into just full-time YouTube, trying not to invest too heavily in too many more tools right now. But I'd say if you were going to do this very much, especially if you're going to skim coat, I'd get a full set of skim coating blades. And for those of you that have bought the pre-order to my book, I thank you, and I am trying to work on that. Still having health problems. Can't figure out what's going on. Ever since the vertigo hit me a year ago, I found out I have 40% nerve damage on one side, and I still have the vertigo, and it just seems that I'm just tired all the time, and I mean exhausted. I can work 4, 5, 6 hours a day, and then I'm just shot. But I live on energy drinks right now, so I can keep putting these videos out and building the studio. So we're getting there. But I started working on the ebook again, and not sure who all knows about it, but I think this book's going to help a lot of you, because the premise is there's so many tools out there when it comes to drywall tools, and I know it can be really confusing for, let's see, I'm trying to find something for you here too, to understand which tools do you need. I mean, you walk in and there's just all these tools on the wall, and do I need 3-inch or 4-inch or 5-inch? Do I need stainless steel, blue steel? What's with the rib on the back of the knives, and with the different shapes of the 6-inch knives, and so on and so on. So I decided to put this ebook together because it'll really help you guys understand tools and materials. So I'm going to cover the drywall, all the different drywall muds, as well as the different tools. And then I'm going to go through and give you guys choices. So like I'll say, all right, here's, if you're going to buy a 6-inch taping knife, here's a mid-grade, a cheap grade, and a premium grade, and what's the differences, and do you need the premium, or can you get by with a cheap one? And I'll explain why. And then I'm going to do a whole terminology thing where I go through and list all the different terminology so you understand some of the terms that we use. So anyway, I think that'll help a lot. Audio, or the audio's okay now, isn't it? But it is getting kind of late. It's been an hour and 15 minutes, so I think we're going to wrap this one up for tonight. And I want to thank all of you for showing up and spending some time with me. If you want to do this again, comment down below. You can comment below the video after it's uploaded. This will become a permanent video that you can watch anytime. You just won't be able to have this live interaction. And I appreciate, Sean, I appreciate you guys when you use my links to order stuff. I mean, if you need to buy it locally, I totally understand. I'm not like, oh, I'm not doing this just to make money off those links, but when you guys do that, it does help. And as always, let me know in comments below videos. I appreciate the comments below videos, because YouTube looks at those and they'll rank my videos higher the more you guys comment. Even if you just pop in and say hi or good video, any of that, it helps our videos get promoted more, help us do better. And pretty soon I can afford to do this full time and put out a lot more information for you, plus up the quality on everything. So thanks to everybody tonight for showing up, and I'm going to leave this open for about 30 more seconds or so in case you got any late comments coming through. But I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.